Abigail is the latest film from Radio Silence, the directing team behind the latest two Scream films that not everyone loved. I certainly did, and I became a pretty big fan of Radio Silence because of those films. And Abigail tells the story of a group of criminals that kidnap the daughter of a powerful man hoping to get ransom. Little do they know that their captive is actually a vampire that begins to kill them one by one. So I definitely had a great level of anticipation with this film ever since I saw the trailer. And I wanted to do a video of top 10 most anticipated films for 2024, but I got busy with other videos that I was making. Abigail would have definitely been on the list, so I was really excited for it. I do have quite a few thoughts on this film. Some thoughts that I was actually quite surprised to be having, but all the things I'm going to talk about in this video notwithstanding, I would say that for the most part, this film absolutely delivered everything I could have hoped for. For one thing, you have a really great concept. It's what makes movies like Taken special, because it's like, clearly there's villains in the story, but apparently these villains messed with the wrong person and they're screwed. That's always a fun concept to me. This film, pretty awesome because of that. This film goes in a lot of different directions that aren't specified in the trailer. It takes certain twists that I didn't expect that for the most part were pleasant. Key on for the most part. I'll probably say that a lot in this video. We'll get into that. It made for a story. It made for a film that, although it's made up of different familiar parts, the way it's constructed, the way it's put together by both the writers and ultimately by Radio Silence and their magnificent directing, they take all these familiar pieces and combine it to make something that is, I would say, wholly new. But when you're talking about the directing side of things, Radio Silence, they can direct a film to death. Especially like in the color, the look of this film that is very dark, but usually when I've seen films use such a dark color palette, it looks kind of drab, it looks kind of lifeless. And that's not what I felt here. There was definitely a life in this film, but the colors were so richly gothic and vintage in a way, kind of going for that classic monster movie feel, which is another thing I really loved about this film. But just on a visual level, even incorporating the sound design, this film, to a surprising degree, was kind of frightening for me. It really got under my skin, and I gotta give huge props to Radio Silence to be able to pull that off without going into the regular trodden paths of jump scares or overuse of gore, for the most part, but it just shows that they are masters of their craft. But now let's talk about the characters. At the core of this film, our main lead is Melissa Barrera, who is fantastic as Sam in both of the Scream films. She's fantastic here again. Such a great character and a really interesting arc. Her character just adds the heart to the film, where this film doesn't overly develop all the other characters, but what it does with her, it keeps the humanity there. And that's what I really liked about a character. And even though you get into these other characters that aren't so developed, they're still really fun to be around. With that, there's some really good use of humor in this. At times, dark humor that's mixed in with all the gore. Like I said, these aren't the best characters. Like, they're the protagonists, but they're clearly also villains. Just in the different ways that they interact with each other, that they interact with the scenarios that they get put in. It's just the right level of asshole. You're watching these people that you shouldn't like, but still manage, for the most part, to be pretty fun. But of course, you gotta talk about the main thread of this film, Abigail, this vampire girl. She is awesome, dude. I mean, she has a perfect balance of being able to pull off like these cute kid vibes, but also be surprisingly terrifying. The script does this great cat and mouse dynamic between her and all the people that are trapped in this location with her. And she even says a line at a certain point, "I like playing with my food." And that was really terrifying, guys. And I think that just as Megan is a new horror icon in that film. Abigail, with just one film, is a horror icon as well. With all of that being said, this film was so awesome, and it had me pretty much completely all the way until it gets to a certain point in that third act. There's a certain reveal that happens, and ah, that's why all throughout the review I said, for the most part, because you get to that third act, and what it does to pay off everything that the first 2/3 set up, I really didn't care for. Especially with one character that seems to have at least the slightest bit of redemption. Or at least there was the idea in my head of like, okay, this character's been this way. But, they shouldn't take them in this route because that would be kind of stereotypical. That would be pretty generic. And what they do with them is certainly unexpected, in a sense, but it does go that generic path. Then I'm like, oh, really? You went that route. You did that thing with the character. And it really sidesteps our main thread of Abigail. The whole final battle-ish of the film, again, no spoilers, but it just didn't click for me. I've never understood why people had so many issues with the ending of Scream 6, another Radio Silence film, like I said at the beginning of this video. I put out a video, a Scream 6 spoiler review, where I defended that ending. I still love that ending. I still appreciate everything they did thematically with the reveals of Ghostface. Which again, that's the specific writers of that film. That's not anything for Radio Silence at all, because they didn't write it, as well as they didn't write Abigail. But that being said, I have more sympathy for the people that found Scream 6 disappointing, because I know what it feels like to make it 2/3 of the way into a film, absolutely love it, and then the ending just goes in a place that baffles you. Unfortunately, the way that the ending is, even though it's not bad, it's just very subversively disappointing. It throws a level of complexity to the story that I, for one, don't care of the lore that's actually being set up. And the fact that I don't care for that lore now that it's been revealed, it makes parts of the first 2/3 not work as well, because I know, oh, yeah, that's an interesting idea, but now I know where you're going to pay it off, and I'm not so much of a fan of that anymore. I was signed off on the idea of this film because it was so awesome, but yet it was also so simple. It's no surprise that the second half of this film is much more gorier, much more bloodier than the first half. Of course, this is a vampire film, and that should be expected. But I just felt that, to a certain extent, the second half of the film really got to be too much. I'm someone who can appreciate some good gore effects. The beginning half, 2/3, it was in moderation. And then you get to the end, and it's a literal bloodbath. In my head, I just rolled my eyes. And as someone who's not a vampire fan, but can enjoy that type of story if it's done well as I can enjoy any type of horror story if it's a good plot, if it has characters, if it all comes together in the end. This film really disappointed me, and the fact that it feels like it has to shove so much blood at the screen, that doesn't do it any favors. This is definitely a frustrating film. The first 2/3, I was watching it and I was like, wow, this is as good, if not actually slightly better than I thought it was going to be. And at a certain point I thought, wow, this might rival Civil War for my favorite film thus far in 2024. And then the last third happens and I'm like, oh, no, this film is just good. I'm gonna give Abigail a B. I still like it, but I guess I'm in the minority that actually found this film kind of underwhelming. But guys, that being said, have you seen Abigail? What did you think about it? Let me know down below in the comment section if you've seen it. Make sure to subscribe if you haven't, hit the like button, hit the bell for notifications. Guys, look forward to more reviews coming very soon, and I'll see you then.